The Secrets of Star Wars is brought to you by the Starquest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
Hi, this is Vanessa Marshall. I play Hera Syndulla on Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to the Secrets of Star Wars podcast. May the Force be with you always.
You're listening to the Secrets of Star Wars, episode 89.
Hello there.
It's a power that Jedi have that lets them control people and make things float.
Impressive. Every word in that sentence was wrong.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
It's against my programming to impersonate a deity.
That's not how the Force works.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force, and I fear nothing.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
Hey everyone, I'm Father Andrew Kinstetter, aka Father Fett, and you're listening to the Secrets of Star Wars, where we talk about everything connected to that galaxy far, far away, including the deeper themes and meanings. Of course, right off the bat, just a reminder that you can get your own official Secrets of Star Wars t-shirt that encapsulates our philosophy of finding hope in a galaxy far, far away. Just go to sqpn.com/merch and you can get that in various styles and sizes, so you can be the talk of your local town. Also, we have a new way to join the Starquest fan club mailing list, and so you can text Starquest to 66866 to join us on the Starquest fan club. So this is an email mailing list. So text Starquest to 66866. Also, of course, please just share the podcast on your favorite social media platforms, so that way we can be seen and heard by more people who would be interested in hearing our take on all things Star Wars. And definitely, if you've got time, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts to let us know how we're doing. And that also helps get us seen by more people. So to jump into today's discussion, today we are discussing the 16th and finale episode of The Bad Batch, Kamino Lost. And joining me tonight on the panel are Angela Ciolana.
Hi there.
Hello. Second up is Mike Creevy this evening.
Hey, everybody. Good to be back.
Yeah, it's good to have you. Thanks for filling in last week for me.
Oh, my pleasure.
And third and final this evening is Thomas Sanjurjo.
It's good to be here.
Great to have you. So before we jump into the Bad Batch, we have our ongoing ham solo segment. So this is kind of becoming quite a fun little thing that we're doing. So first of all, shout out to Jeff Hacker. I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correctly. He sent us an email and told us a very brief story about going to Chick-fil-A and tried to use Din Djarin as his name, and they put Den on his. But I assume
how does that make more sense?
So going as Mando, but I hope the bounty was worth it. And Mike also has his typical you're about the only one that does it regularly on the show.
It was funny because I was getting a pound of, it's normally what we get, this lower sodium ham, and for whatever reason it occurred to me as I'm ordering it, I was like, who's the last person in the Star Wars universe who would ever get lower sodium ham? And you guessed it, Jabba the Hutt. Because something tells me that Jabba's not really keeping track of his health.
I don't know. He's got that slug-like figure. So low sodium ham might be the way to go.
Yeah. No, who needs it? No, but what's funny is the funny thing was, of course, as I've told listeners before, the downside of all this is they don't actually say it out loud. They just print it on the ticket. So whatever, I'm going to try to do this in other places where they actually have to say it. But my wife laughed at me because as we're checking out, the checkout kid scans the ham, and I think I was mistaken. I thought he looked at the ticket. So then I started talking about it to him and how what I do, and he could not have possibly been less interested in what I was saying. It was so awkward. He's not even reacting at all. He's just scanning stuff, and I'm like, well, okay. And Christine's just laughing at me off to the side. I'm like, oh, well, okay, fine. So, but that was it for this week.
And you got to have fun with it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it'll resonate with him later.
Eventually. I think so.
Right. So, listeners, of course, if you want to share your fun interactions with Star Wars and in your daily life in these kind of ways, send us an email, starwars@sqpn.com, or you can use the hashtag #HamSolo on Twitter, and we will pull those and share those on the show. So just fun ways that Star Wars interacts with just our day-to-day lives. So definitely.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a food order.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And I figure that's probably a good way to kind of branch it out, because not everybody does what Mike does every week. But a fun way to, Star Wars and daily life, how they interplay. So go ahead and email us or tweet those out, and we'll share those on the show. So to jump into our show this evening, we're talking finale Bad Batch. So what'd you guys think?
Yep, about like that. It was a good episode. It was a tough ending. Like they really bought the way that those characters were interacting at the end, and you felt just the drop of the finale. Like them leaving, flying away, and Crosshair sitting on the landing pad. That was an emotional, tense moment, and it's setting it up for other stuff. We're going into a second season. Crosshair's going to be back. There's going to be other stuff that goes on, but still, it was difficult watching that, because they really just in that last episode, these last two episodes really pulled his character back into the fold of us caring about him, not just as a like, oh, he's a danger on the side, but no, we want to see him be saved. We want to see him come back to the family.
Yeah, I really thought it was a beautiful ending. As much physical wreckage was around them, there was also the emotional wreckage that you could really see as well. And as I was watching it for the second time, I realized just how well the creators of the show did that for this episode in particular. As everything was happening physically, I noticed that there were some connections to their interior stories as well. So I'm excited to share those observations throughout this episode. But, definitely some deep character moments. And by the end of this episode, I said, I've got to get myself an Omega shirt now. So come on, Her Universe or whoever is going to make it StarWars.com. Let's go. I'm ready for it. Omega really stepped up in a big way. And I think I really solidified her as, I don't know, maybe a top 10 character in Star Wars now for me. So.
Okay.
Yeah, just like Crosshair's line, the kid's calling the shots now. I was like, you got a better plan? Let's go. Let's hear it.
Well, and that's the thing is I agreeing with you guys all the way. And especially what you said, Angela. I mean, I kind of feel like she just didn't even feel like a kid anymore. Like there's just the buy-in. Like I know, Thomas, you were saying last week about the earned character development, right? And so that I think there was a lot more of that. And what I didn't get a chance to do that I think I'd like to at some point is go back and watch these back to back, instead of like a week apart. I didn't get a chance to watch this the whole way through a second time. I was doing it a little bit before we started tonight, but I was thinking like, I'd really like to, just see them all together. These two parts, just to kind of get the full effect of that. Cause I definitely felt like this felt like definitely more of, part two than, a different episode. So it really did pick right back up where we left off last week, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, and there's that interesting aspect too, that Omega is actually older than the other, the other clones. I don't think she has quite as much kind of battle experience, of course, as the other ones, but to mentally have to kind of shift and say like, oh yeah, she is calling the shots, but she's just as capable, as the other Bad Batchers. It was good to see. I have to say this is not the finale that I expected, and I'm okay with that because I know that there's a season 2. I think if we didn't know season 2 is happening, this this story, I mean, it wraps up, but they're like, I personally was expecting like Rex to show up, or even the Syndulas to show up, or I was expecting a larger story. But knowing that there's a season 2, I'm completely happy with where they ended. I was still expecting, I guess, other cameos from characters to pop in. And
I'll be honest, though, I'm really happy with the way this ended, because I've been watching a lot of Netflix shows lately, like the Netflix originals, and they're great, but it's like they crammed 5 seasons worth of show into 1 season because they weren't sure they were going to get a second, you know?
Yep.
And it's like, man, that plot point was great, but it just really needed a lot more room to breathe. And this season afforded room for those characters to breathe and for the stories to develop and the relationships to build. Yeah. And it didn't feel cheap. And that's the one thing I hate about those compressed shows, is that it's like, oh, I see what you were going for, and you just needed to have the comfort to say, I'm going to do a quarter of this and then play it out over more seasons if I get them. If not, I'm satisfied with what happened. And that's, I was reading some reviews about, the season overall, and they were talking about how up and down it was, and how, there were some really great episodes, and then there were some episodes that were just kind of throwaways. And it's like, you needed that, because you needed the space to really let the characters develop and for us to buy into them. And now to care about a second season, not that you try to say everything all at once, right?
Yeah. I think that's a very appropriate point to make with this episode, because it definitely, I mean, it was very character focused. There was all the action of them escaping, but it was more the highlights were the moments when they would interact with Crosshair, or when Omega, I mean, I noticed her a lot. She seemed to be the one trying to reach Crosshair the most, as she was in her role. And those were the spots that shined out for me. And you wouldn't be able to have that without the character growth that we've seen throughout the last 15 episodes. And you wouldn't have that if the Syndulas showed up and Rex showed up and everybody, kind of came together for this explosive finale. This was a very character focused finale, which I think was very good.
Although it was explosive.
It was explosive. And there's always a bigger fish.
I was tempted to, like, when you first welcomed me to the show, I was so tempted to just be like, Father, I'm so sorry for your loss. No, the loss of Kamino. But I'm waiting till later, because there's a couple things where I was like surprised, as I'm sure you guys were too. And then I know it'll come up later, just about Kamino itself. That was just kind of like, oh man, that's even worse.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think I could share Omega's sentiment at the very end as she's watching the smoke rise, and just kind of lamenting that fact, and it was pointed out, and I think this is an interesting way to look at it. Someone sort of pointed out that this was almost like the last nail in the coffin of like the whole prequel era, with Kamino being destroyed. And so yeah, there is a loss there. I love Kamino, but
it was in the right hands. It was in the right hands in Dave Filoni's. Because I think there was a way to do it, like we're blowing up the prequels because it's the prequels, right? And that was not what happened. This was very much an honoring what happened and moving it into the new era, which was really good, really well done.
Right. The sentiment was very clearly, we don't want to see the city destroyed, and we're having to watch it be destroyed. Right. Not, yay, now we can move on to A New Hope and Rebels and kind of move in that direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think we've mentioned that before, that, I mean, what Dave Filoni has done with the Clone Wars and with the Bad Batch to kind of flesh out between the movies has just been stellar. So with that being said, we'll hop right into the recap. We pick up right where things kind of left off in this. We see Tipoca City being bombarded by Admiral Rampart, which was some really cool cinematography, and the lightning and the clouds, and I mean just the menacing presence was really, really effective.
Yeah, and they really, I think, underscored the difference between kind of the stillness of, being on that cruiser versus the chaos of the destruction that's happening down below, the order of the Empire, and then just like all of this destruction and chaos below. It was really sad, but it was, it was eerie, like as you were saying too.
Yeah. Yeah, and so the chaos causes Omega and Crosshair to be separated from the rest of the group as the city is falling and flooding. And on the Imperial cruiser, we have I suspect it's a clone trooper. I don't know if you guys picked this up or not, but
yes. Yeah, I agree.
Okay, because he reports that all Kaminoan facilities have collapsed into the sea, but he says it in a very hesitant sort of way that implies that he has an emotional connection to it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, they apparently haven't phased out all the clones yet, but
well, and he wasn't in the new armor too. He was in the old clone armor, which is
true.
I made sure to go back and watch that again because I was like, is that a clone troop? And it was because he had that helmet that was the classic clone helmet. So that's what they were trying to get across there.
Which that just kind of echoes throughout the whole episode again of like kind of lamenting losing Kamino. We swap back to Omega and Crosshair, and the compartment's filling up with water, and they can't open the door, and Wrecker is doing his best to open the door. And this was I thought it was an interesting choice to immediately put Crosshair with Omega in this situation.
Yeah.
Because right from the get-go, we're again seeing Omega and her compassion, win out, because she could have just kind of either not tried to help Crosshair, but she basically kind of risks her life, because as the whole compartment fills, she's trying to push that beam off of him, and ultimately thankfully uses AZ and her light bow to rescue him from drowning.
And this was the first time that I really saw the physical manifestation of their interior realities, because what do we see? We see this huge wall separating the rest of Clone Force 99 from Crosshair. And it's really not just a wall, it's a door that has closed. And he himself is trapped by these pieces of the place that made him. And he's trapped because of the Empire. And so I really felt like, all of that was kind of physically illustrating what's been going on with them, and the fact that Omega was there with him. She, like you said, she's continuously, even the fact that she tells Hunter Crosshair is stuck. That's what she says over the comm. And it's kind of what really is happening with him, like he is stuck in this idea of being a soldier. Later on he'll talk about how the Empire is going to control the galaxy and he's going to be a part of it. And it just goes back to this idea of his old mentality, this war mentality, what he thinks being a soldier is. So yeah, I really loved how here was Omega literally physically trying to free him from all of this. And she continues to do that kind of emotionally, right? Like throughout this episode.
It makes Crosshair's, arc at the end of this episode all the more tragic. Because we have, and again, I like the metaphor that's going on here. Even, Wrecker and Tech and Hunter are trying to break through that wall. Granted, they're trying to get Omega too, but they've always been open to bringing Crosshair back and welcoming him back, and Crosshair has, ultimately he has a desire for the family, for the squad, for that sort of thing, and he thinks he's found it in the Empire, and even Hunter points out, I think later, that the Empire is just going to treat you like a number. you know, but whereas the Clone Force is the family that he desires, but he doesn't see it. So
right.
it makes it more tragic what happens.
Yeah.
Well, I like too the fact there that to kind of extend the metaphor a little bit, that opening that door is dangerous, right? It's better and easier for them to just go on and to continue on. And yeah, they're saving Omega, but getting that door open enough to get Crosshair through and pull them into safety is hazardous to them, but they're still doing it. That's still their push is to face that danger. You know, they came back to get Hunter, same thing. They knew what they were walking into. They knew the trap that they were coming for, and they still did it. And that's kind of, you know, that's been who they are, and they're growing ever more into that.
Right. And it's so much work for them, right? Like they're struggling so hard to get that thing open. And it's interesting, like they get just a small amount like open, and then the water kind of creates this vacuum that helps them to get the both of them. And, you know, it just makes me think about sometimes when you're working with people and, you know, maybe they've gone through something like traumatic or difficult, and you're really trying to get across to them, you know, how much they're, you know, loved or safe or whatever in a certain environment. And just like, you just get the smallest little opening. And sometimes that's all you need to just, you know, get that person back. So yeah, I just really loved, again, just the physical metaphor that we're seeing here.
Yeah. And to take it even maybe a step deeper, that's the risk we take when we love. Like when we authentically love, we're opening ourselves up to suffering. And the easy thing to do is to just cut yourself off and say, like, I'm never going to open myself up to that pain. But the problem is then you never open yourself up to the joy that's there with love. And there's risk, absolutely. But ultimately the risk is worth it. And you might get hurt, but love is worth it. And yeah, I mean, we've seen Clone Force 99 kind of grow into this role, you know, beyond just soldiers. And I think kind of identifying and embodying that, you know, a good leader protects his squad, is, I think Hunter points that out. And, you know, you help the guy in need, and, you know, you love, and you're going to risk pain, but it's worth it. And I mean, we'll see, I guess, where things go. Crosshair could be moved by that later on, but definitely by the end of the episode today, he wasn't. So they do manage to reunite through the bulkhead there, and they have to keep on trying to escape, and they're going down this corridor, and there's the whole scene of that whole part of the building crashing down to the ocean floor, and the clone pods were being destroyed, and I will point out, and I put this in my notes, that the music was incredible at this point. It was kind of I recognized it from, and I can't remember where else in Star Wars I recognized it from, but it was a very kind of mournful kind of tone, which fit. So they continue after it crashes down to the ocean floor. They continue to try to find a more secure space, which is then ironic because it's their old barracks is where they managed to get to. That's the the most, I think, I forget who said it, but it's the most habitable space, they said, which was a jab at their prior living conditions in that barracks.
Well, but then also they make the comment on how much it's changed too, and it's funny because the way that it's changed is it's become unpersonalized, right? It's become just a hole to sleep in, not a place that they occupied and lived in, and had changed themselves. You know, the only thing that's left of them is the marks on the wall that mark their successes,
the tick marks.
Yeah. It was here that Crosshair and Hunter have a very real conversation, which was very pointed. But they talked a lot about choice, And, Crosshair is trying to tell the group that, they're looking at the marks on the wall, and he says, all those missions, and you threw it away. And, Hunter makes the choice, or makes the comment that they made a choice, and so did Crosshair. And they have this conversation where Hunter tries to tell Crosshair that, blind allegiance makes you a pawn. And that's where Hunter says, a real leader protects his squad. And they're kind of going back and forth on this. I think this is a Star Wars theme, though, the notion of choice, and the idea that you can choose to be the hero, the Jedi. You can choose to be the Sith, or go down that road. And so I didn't really get a chance to join in your conversation last week, but the whole idea that Crosshair has been choosing the Empire for the last however many episodes, I think is very, very important, because it's that whole notion that he has chosen this, and where does that leave his destiny? He's not just some automaton. And so they're kind of pointing that out, and even though Crosshair has chosen the Empire, he's still a little blind to what's really going on, even though he doesn't think he himself is.
Yeah, and I think also it goes back to the Star Wars theme of, your motivations. When we talk about the Jedi versus the Sith, often we talk about the doing things for right knowledge and defense, using the Force for good purposes to help others, right? More of a sense of like selflessness, versus the Sith, which is dark side, which is controlling others, using your anger to fuel you, all those things that I think we also see here, right? Like Hunter is saying, well, you do things to, for the good of your squad, right? And Crosshair is kind of saying, no, you do. I want to be where we're in charge, where we're in control of everybody else, where we're at the top. And so there's that shift, right? That difference. So yeah, that's definitely what I saw. And also just this idea of how physically throughout the sequence, Crosshair was kind of pausing every once in a while and saying, we've got to go back. There must be another way. He doesn't want to go forward. He wants to go backward, right? Back to where he was before. Yeah. And so again, this whole what they're feeling is we're seeing, right, manifested in their actions.
Mm-hmm. And some of it is fear, and that's he never expresses it, and he wouldn't, right? But it's the security of being in a space that's safe now. Yeah. And the squad is looking at, well, this isn't safe permanently. We need to figure this out so that we can have a solution. And his tendency is to say, no, this is safe now. Let's stay here. And that's, you kind of get that sense from him that's why the Empire still makes so much sense. Why it still is the preeminent decision for him, because it's secure. It's the thing that is now. And who are we if we aren't clones? Who are we if we leave this structure?
Well, and I think that's what a lot of people throughout the galaxy agree with. The whole Operation War Mantle, willing recruits, they're recruited and they're willing because they think that the Empire is going to provide that stability. Mm-hmm. Which, of course, we all know, being kind of outside of the story itself, that's not really what they want, but it's in character, that's what they think they want. And they think that the Empire is the best way to get there.
I think with the choice thing, I was trying to find this quote because I've always loved it. I shortened it a little bit, but the importance of the cumulative effect of the choices we make, and that you know, like we were saying last week, like we're saying tonight, you know, that you can't use the old Flip Wilson, like the devil made me do it thing, you know, Jesus, you know, you meet him face to face and, you know, what about you? What about your life? Oh, you know, the devil made me do it. It was this person. It was this thing. It was this injustice. It was whatever. None of that flies. Now, I mean, all of those things will impact the choices we make, and they can affect possibly culpability. But I love, as usual, C.S. Lewis, I think, says it better than most. I have this quick little quote from Mere Christianity. I just love the way he says it. Every time you make a choice, you are turning the central part of you, the part of you that chooses, into something a little different than it was before. And taking your life as a whole with all your innumerable choices all your life long, you are slowly turning this central thing into a heavenly creature or a hellish creature, either into a creature that is in harmony with God and with other creatures and with itself, or else one that is in a state of war and hatred with God and with its fellow creatures and with itself. And that's what I love about all good stories, you know, and this, because I love Star Wars. Where's Crosshair on that spectrum? Like, obviously he's not at the end yet, you know, so because he's not at the end, we as Christian viewers, right, have hope, right, have hope for him. Even when he's standing there on that landing pad, which we'll get to and everything, it's like, he's not done yet. You know, I still have hope for him. Right. I mean, this is Star Wars, where even when you fall from an impossible height, you're never dead, except possibly if you're Mace Windu. But I'm firmly believing he's alive. By the way, that's a whole other topic, but for recent reasons. But yeah, I think, long story short, I just wrote down redemption in huge letters in my notes, you know, for tonight, because I like that. I feel like this is being done in a unique way with him. The whole question about Crosshair, Vader's redemption arc is wonderful, right? I like Kylo's redemption arc. Maybe not everybody does, fair enough, but they're not exactly the same. And this is very different, because now you're dealing with, there's not one dramatic thing where he's changed, which I've kept waiting for, you know, but it's like, God, man, this dude is stubborn. Yeah. You know, like, well, and I'm instantly thinking of like friends and family, where I'm like, why can we never, like, this family member who, you know, might be aligned with certain like church teachings, for example, but just so far off the deep end in one very central, important one. And like, I can't understand how, like, how could you, and I'm not perfect by any means, but how could you possibly not see this, you know? And I get that from Hunter, especially in this, because he's the one who talks to him the most, but that frustration of like, dude, like, you know what's going, like, you know, you're choosing to do this, how could you be choosing to do this? And yeah, I'm really excited to see where they go with this, and I'm glad it's not over yet.
And I love the fact that they are letting him choose, right? They're not forcing him into the choice at any point. Like, the only point they did was when they knocked him out in the room with the droids. Yeah. And that was because, you know, it was out of necessity and it had to be done. And so let's just carry him along with us. But, you know, even by the end, it's not, you have to come with it. You don't have a choice. You can't just stay here on this platform. What are you going to do? You know, you make the choice. If you want to stay here, we're willing to let you make that choice. We're not going to force you in any direction. You have to choose.
Although, real quick, do you guys, I'm assuming you've probably all seen the original Madagascar movie. Do you remember how, like, they keep tranquilizer darting Alex like 4 or 5 times back to back? I was kind of hoping for like a first person, like, Crosshair type, just again, just he keeps waking up. Where are we now? But no, that wouldn't fit.
I love the family themes that continue to run in this, though. And Mike, you started to go down that road of, you know, like, I'm sure we all have had an experience of either a brother or sister or cousin or someone who we just wonder where they're coming from, and we're, you know, and we struggle to understand them. And it's, you know, that's such a relatable thing. But what I love about what they're doing here is that even though they don't agree with Crosshair, they're not giving up on him. And there's always you know, just the next scene, even, you know, they act very much like brothers. You know, they're in this tunnel, and Wrecker has something on his mind, and even Crosshair's like, you know, well, what do you got on your tiny little mind? Like
your tiny mind.
And like that just sounds something like, you know, my older brother might say to me if he's really exasperated with me, you know. But then Wrecker, you know, he's like, well, you know, all this time and you didn't even try to come back, and, you know, we'd have taken you. And like Wrecker is obviously hurt by the fact that Crosshair didn't try to come back.
It was a great moment for him. I love that line coming from him.
Yeah. And I really appreciated even the next line. Then Tech kind of jumps in and he's like, you know, always the analytical. He's, you know, Crosshair has always been severe and unyielding, and you cannot change that, and he cannot change that. And Crosshair kind of asks him, well, why are you defending me? And Tech says something incredibly profound. He says, yes. I am not. Understanding you does not mean that I agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like we've all had that experience with someone, especially in our own family. Like, you know, we can try our best to understand them, but understanding does not mean that we have to agree, you know, with someone who's completely kind of turned their life in a different direction than us, and that's the reality of family.
Yeah. But and standing up and saying the truth to someone about them, you know, when someone's being, you know, and in this case, Wrecker wasn't being mean to him or anything. He was just trying to understand. You could tell that he didn't understand what was going on, and Tech had some insight there. And stepping in and saying that to stop a conflict where there doesn't really need to be one, you know, where it's just these two people are of different opinions, and the conflict that they're about to have is not going to change either one of their opinions about the other one. So just look, I understand where both of you are coming from.
Yeah.
And also, just being a peacekeeper, right?
Yeah. And I like also that Tech starts off by telling Wrecker, let it go, because, you know, so often we hold on to those hurts, right? And we either keep a grudge or it leaves that wall up, and we can never really connect with the person because we just hold on to all that stuff. And it's so amazing that Tech, of all the, you know, Clone Force 99, that he's the one that has this emotional insight, like, let it go, right? Because it's not going to do us any good. It's not going to do you any good to hold on to that, that hurt, you know, of not wanting to come back. So yeah, I loved that as well. This was I mean, it was a short exchange, but it was, I think I'll probably remember it for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I can't remember which one of you, maybe Angela, it was you who kind of said it, like, you know, this episode, we see different aspects of each of the characters that because we've been with them for 15 episodes, it is completely in line with their character. And it's I think we said it's sort of an earned sort of thing. And like even Wrecker's perspective is very clearly Wrecker, you know, and even Tech, you know, he's still analyzing, but I think his analytical brain was able to kind of glean that truth. And we see all of these, even the way Hunter interacts with him and Omega. It's exactly what we would expect from journeying with them for 15 episodes and knowing their characters. And it's just, yeah, it's super, super appropriate. So they continue to try to escape, and they're trying to get to Nala Se's lab, because then they can get back to, ideally they can get back to the Marauder. And a little bit of chaos ensues with the fish that comes and tries to attack the tunnel, and they're able to repel the creature with AZ kind of turning on the power, which shocks him, and they are able to get into Nala Se's lab. And they are stuck there because the tunnel that goes back to the landing platform is regrettably destroyed. And so this was where someone pointed out, I think Tech pointed it out, that Omega is older than the rest of Clone Force 99, which was a whole mental shift that had to happen in my brain, you know? Right. Like, that's what happens when you have fast aging clones. Mm-hmm. They ultimately decide that what they need to do is before they do that, there's some really good dialogue that happens here. Again, they're sort of arguing over, you know, Crosshair is annoyed that Omega's the kid calling the shots now, which again, she has clearly earned it by this point. And I think you guys were talking about that last week, her strategist mind and everything. She and it's, I mean, she knows these tunnels. She knows the lay of the land. And that's when Hunter does tell Crosshair, you know, the Empire's just going to treat you like a number. And so there's that whole idea of who's your true family. And Omega has this moment too with Crosshair. And I think she said what I was feeling. She tries to sit with him and she says, "I wanted to believe that it was the inhibitor chip that made you like this, but I was wrong." And I felt like that was exactly what I was feeling too. Because if it was just the inhibitor chip that made him do this, then all you'd have to do is, knock him out, take the chip out, and everything's A-okay. Rather than dealing with the fact that he has chosen this path, and we may not agree with it, but we still gotta deal with it.
Yeah, and I kind of wondered, like, why did they take the time to have this moment? Because I think that all kind of went without saying, but at the same time, they were almost giving a lot of the different characters, not necessarily Echo, because he really wasn't part of this, you know, this Clone Force 99 from the beginning, but all the other guys kind of have their moment to kind of speak their frustrations to Crosshair. And so Omega being their sister, I think, and having, you know, she says, I searched for you guys because of my connection to you. And so her voicing that frustration, I think, was important, because it's almost like, you know, going back to the family thing, it's like when you have that family member, everybody's gotta, you know, say, this is how I feel, you know, about what you're doing or what's going on. And so it kind of, it kept that family kind of theme together for her to have that kind of chat with him too.
Yeah. Poor Crosshair. He's not really sharing his side of it too much, but other than that, he thinks that Hunter's wrong.
By the way, I gotta say real quick, I went back and rewatched, you know, the intro arc for them, the first 4 episodes of season 7 from Clone Wars.
Yep.
And I was honestly alarmed, because I haven't seen it since it originally came out. Like, their voices are pretty different. At least Crosshair's. Like, Wrecker's basically there, but they fleshed him out a little bit. Like, he was really just hulking and mindless, like in those 4 episodes. You know, and they kind of toned that down a little bit. Tech's basically the same, but he was like a little more. He was actually like almost a little less nerdy, kind of. He was a little more like rough around the edges, and they kind of made him a little more analytical, I think. But yeah, Crosshair's voice sounded noticeably different, you know. And so jumping back to this episode tonight, because I just watched those, I was reminded of D. Bradley Baker talking about the coiled snake thing that he's developed for, and it was like really like, man, even when he's like toned down and just kind of introspective in this episode, he still kind of creeps me out a little bit.
Yeah.
But I do like, you know, it was really like we were saying last week, like last week's episode was honestly like the first time this whole season that I felt anything for Crosshair. So they definitely did that on purpose, I think, you know, for sure, to leave us hanging, you know, for next season.
So they decide at this point the only way to get out is to use these medical capsules to get to the surface of the ocean. And these medical capsules are airtight, and AZ is going to guide them to the surface through all the debris. And there was AZ says that your safety and well-being is my primary objective. And so he was talking to Omega, and I think it must have been specifically Omega. I didn't get the feeling that he was talking about all Clone Force 99, but he was very clearly charged with Omega. And this was important because as I was watching this and the scene goes on and they all get swept out into the water and Omega's capsule gets trapped, and AZ is making sure everybody gets to the surface, but then has to use his torch to cut Omega free, but in the process he's using up the rest of his battery. And at one point then, as they're going to the surface, he notices her path is free and he's going to let her go, and basically his life is going to end. But what I loved about that whole aspect was the whole idea of it's the Greek word telos, which means end or goal. Like AZ completed what he was made for. And it was at that point that he was okay with saying, I'm going to just, my battery's going to deplete and I can, I'm happy to kind of go and die, so to speak. And he was okay with that. And I love that idea, because the whole notion of like each of us has a telos, each of us has a goal, and our goal is to be saints. And so that's of course what we're striving to live here on Earth as we make those decisions and those choices, and it affects who we are, whether we're heading towards our telos or whether we're heading away from it. I liked the very clear AZ is a droid, and we've often seen a personification in these droids, but I have to say I'm glad AZ survived, but I almost was hoping that he was going to just perish in that scene.
Well, I think I definitely can see what you're saying, and I agree to a certain extent. But at the same time, we got to really see just how powerfully Omega is this selfless character. I saw a YouTube comment when I was looking at people's reactions. Somebody said Omega cares for everyone and everything without thinking for herself. And she really does. I think we got that very much solidified in this moment too. Obviously she has this deep connection with AZ, but we are seeing that literally she is risking her entire life to save him.
And I think it's important. One of the things I noticed in this episode is that he refers to them all by their call sign, which is kind of telling, because if you think about it, the droids are always referred to by their call sign, no matter how much we nickname them. It's AZ is his nickname, but that's part of his call sign. And in a similar way, a lot of the clones gather their nicknames from their call sign in some way, shape, or form. But a lot of them too just kind of pick up the nickname from whatever they're doing or from however they act or something like that. And to see that for her, there's no difference between a droid and one of her brothers, or a clone and a regular person, and there's no difference to her. Everything that has this mentality and this capability of self-awareness is important to her. We saw that in the episode with the Rancor, where she kind of goes out of her way to save this thing. And as she's learning more about it, it becomes even more important to her, because she realizes that it's more than just like a creature. It's more than just an animal. It does have some sense of self-awareness, and so she really goes way out of her way to help. And it's a good marker for her. It has a component of like childlike innocence to it, but at the same time she's past that. And I think that's one of the things that we've seen her grow past that childlike innocence into a real leader who cares about people and who knows that her being is more than just fulfilling missions or, you know, completing at any cost. What, you know, it's more than just getting to the surface and getting to the Marauder and getting off planet, right? It's everybody comes with us. Everybody who started is getting to the end.
Yeah. And then that she puts herself in real jeopardy with this. Mm-hmm. And
even when at the very end, when she's thanking Crosshair, mm-hmm. she says, "Thanks for saving AZ." She doesn't say thanks for saving AZ and me. She says thanks for saving AZ. It's like, wow. She doesn't even think of, you know, her own self in even in that way, you know, that it was important that she be saved, but it was important that everyone else was okay.
That's interesting, because that's the exact opposite, right, of Crosshair, who was being so selfish. He didn't thank her for saving him, but he didn't say anything. And she does say something, but it's only for someone else.
Well, but even Crosshair, I think, Mike, you made the point that, I mean, he hasn't gone completely over to the dark side, you know, so even his choice to save AZ and Omega,
that was his way of doing it.
Right. But like, you know, but it also shows that he's not, I think, there is that hope that he can be redeemed, or that he'll see the light and come back. 'Cause he could have just not done anything. I mean, when he initially stands up in the capsule as they're on top of the water, it's sort of the way that the frame of the scene is it's almost like you're meant to think he's getting ready to shoot Hunter instead of rescuing AZ and Omega. And he chooses to rescue rather than, you know, take Hunter out and, you know, do his own thing.
Wouldn't it be neat if, I'm totally speculating, but in terms of something I don't know that we've ever seen in Star Wars before, but a real life potentially kind of thing, wouldn't it be neat if we have sort of a meeting in the middle kind of thing, where in the arc for Crosshair, he leaves the Empire, but doesn't come back to them. You know, like he goes and he does his own thing. He abandons that Imperial path, but it's not like a jump back in with us and do our thing kind of thing. Like he really does cut his own path, but one that we could all be like, okay, well, it's sad he's leaving, but at least he's not doing that. You know, and then I wonder, like almost a compromise type thing. I think that would be a neat thing to see at some point, but yeah, it just occurred to me now. I don't know if they would do that.
I think to the point of Omega's thanking him for saving AZ too, I think that she was taking his stance of not thanking him for saving her, because it was owed, right? Because he says at that point, "Well, consider us even," right, to her, and that's so.
Yep.
She expected that they were going to take care of her, but she saw that it was above and beyond.
That's a good point. Yeah.
To actually take care of the droid. She knew that he was aiming for the droid, not for her, that he could have very easily just aimed for her, gotten her out of the water, and let the droid go. But he did choose to get the droid as well. And so that's what, you know, when I watched it the second time, I was like, that's what I was seeing in there, was that she was recognizing that they were even, but then thanking him for going above and beyond that.
Actually, and that makes a point too, that perhaps Crosshair is keeping score, but Omega's not. As I mean, as any, I mean, if you are authentically loving each other, like, you know, when me and my brother, there's really not a scorekeeping. I mean, a friendly competition in a lot of things, but ultimately on anything major, like it's no, I'll do this for you, no worries, and you know, no need to pay me back or anything. So yeah, it continues to echo the family theme that they have going on.
Since we're on the platform, we got to talk about it, right? Because they're on Kamino, and as my son pointed out, wait, what's going on? Why is it not rainy.
Yeah. It can be beautiful. I wrote it in my notes. I was like, Kamino can be beautiful. Thanks a lot, Dave Filoni. No, it's not Filoni, but yeah.
Well, I'm sure. Okay, obviously in universe there are weather patterns that allow for nice weather, but at least from a cinematography kind of angle, we needed to see the smoke rising from the fallen city, which you wouldn't have been able to see if there would have been a storm. So,
and I don't know about you guys, but I was sort of I it didn't actually diminish the drama of it, but when they actually hit the bottom of the ocean, I was like, that's all.
Yeah, it's not very deep.
It's not very deep. I was like, it's not super deep. I kind of expected that, so Kamino's full of surprises. It's very shallow ocean, and it can be nice. So
Thomas, were you implying that because the Empire's gone, now the sun's shining?
Now everything's fine, right? They are no longer maybe it was just the facility. The facility was just gathering clouds the whole time.
Well, we don't actually know much about the planet itself. I mean, I don't even know if it's been established in canon, like if there is it a completely ocean world? Is there any land mass anywhere?
I looked it up before. It said it's an aquatic planet, is what Wikipedia said. I just checked before this because I was wondering about that. But
yeah.
Well, I mean, if you were going to build a giant facility, you would need to have land somewhere underneath the ocean to be able to anchor it on. So
the Kaminoans are not exactly like fish type people.
Yeah.
So
and where do those birds land? I'd just fly around all the time. Yeah. On the platform, I guess. But yeah.
But then were they imported? Did they import birds just to have them fly around randomly?
Maybe there's random rock formations.
There you go. Got some Skellig Michael type things out there somewhere.
Yeah.
They should come up with a novel to kind of go into this, and I would totally be there.
Well, they said that Lucas had promised to explore some more of the mystery of Kamino and the deleting of it and everything for episode 3, and then he didn't because they had to cut so much.
Well, and then you had to have that 20-minute lightsaber battle.
Yes. Yep. And you did.
Yes.
Yes. It had to happen.
It's one of the things everyone agrees on.
Yes.
Well, so here we go. This is room for the all of these new the exploration videos that they have, where they have the one of of Hoth and of all of the existing. That's what they need to do, is just have a Kamino fly through where it's like a nature show of Kamino.
National Geographic.
Just nothing but lightning and rain.
Don't they have that on Disney Plus? Isn't that like what is it? Star Wars biomes? I think
biomes.
Yeah. That's what it is. Yep. Yeah.
They got to do more of those. Those are fun.
This is the new one they need. And maybe even explore Kamino post this stuff where there's like reefs growing inside of the the crushed
that'd be cool
city. That would be really neat.
Like revisiting the Titanic type feel, like just really eerie.
Huh. Now that we've gone quite off on a tangent,
please move on, because I was about to say maybe Ray could go there. I'm sorry.
Well, so this is kind of the final scenes of the whole episode, from the smoke in the distance to ultimately the Clone Force 99 again offers Crosshair the chance to come with them, and he chooses to stay behind, knowing, and I think we can safely assume that there is going to be an Imperial scout that's going to come and survey the wreckage and pick him up. And and Hunter makes the comment that just because they want different things doesn't mean that they have to be enemies. Again, fitting with everything that we've been talking about so far. And Omega has the moment with Crosshair where she thanks him for saving AZ, but then she ends with again that kind of gut punch of you're still their brother, Crosshair, and mine too. And then the Marauder leaving Crosshair behind on the landing platform.
He better hope a scout comes, because he's just skin and bones, that guy.
Yeah.
He's not going to last long at all.
Yeah, he's needs a hefty meal. So, but
then they leave us with this tease, which has to play out in season 2. Nala Se gets brought to a mysterious planet with scientists, and the Empire has big things planned for her and her knowledge of genetics and
Or Angela's not. I was doing this for you.
This little Snoke.
Little Snoke. No.
Well, but
I was looking at my notes.
But I think that's. I mean, so the tease is obviously a genetics cloning thing, and I think it eventually, of course, would tie into Snoke.
It's the same uniform Dr. Pershing had on with the Kaminoan emblem and everything.
So has any of you read Heir to the Empire by Timothy Zahn?
Oh yeah, the long time ago.
Yeah. So really the first, not the first Legend book ever written, but kind of the one that kicked off the whole Legends universe. There was a planet in that book called Wayland, and there was similar sorts of things. There was like this base within a mountain, and I forget exactly how it all goes, but Luke ends up having to fight a clone of himself that was created there. So this could be Disney pulling in a Legends planet and facility into canon. So that was kind of a fun parallel there. Any speculations on where they're going to go, or just kind of what we've already said?
Well, honestly, this is maybe a bit of a throwback of just, some fanboy type things that I don't know how they would. I mean, they could make them serve the story, but now with the announcement of season 2, things that I had hoped for, or maybe just part of me was hoping would maybe come up in Bad Batch that clearly didn't in season 1, and most of which we knew probably wouldn't even a few episodes in. Well, now the door's wide open again for a Grogu encounter.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool because that's still on the table. And who wouldn't want that? And clearly there's going to have to be some kind of Boba connections. But what I think is interesting is now I thought they would plant some of those seeds a little more in this to have payoff in Book of Boba Fett. But all they really did was connect that there's this, that he's Alpha and she's Omega. So I think it'd be really cool to somehow go to Book of Boba Fett, which they've confirmed is going to have, I don't know the exact timeline and everything, but I think there are flashbacks in it too, because they want to be able to connect
what I've heard,
some original trilogy stuff. So, but they could, my hope, I don't know if it'll ever happen, haven't heard speculation. I think they should actually have Michelle Ang play Omega live action. Because the age would actually line up, because she's older than me. She sounds very young, but she's, I think, close to 40 or around there. So I think she could play that live action, and I think that'd be really neat, kind of tie-in. So I don't know if anyone's doing that or not, but those are just some things I hope to see.
I think that's
season 2.
I would think that's going to happen. Maybe not until the very end of the Book of Boba Fett, right?
Yeah,
and like as the cliffhanger for the end of the season, but also the
connection,
the candy for everybody who's been keeping up with everything that's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I would say my thoughts are part analysis and part speculation. So if you look at this episode, this finale, part 2, we see that we kind of, well, and also part 1, they start at the training facility, then they go to their barracks, then they go to the private lab, then they get into medical capsules and go into the water. It was almost like going backwards, like rebirth almost. Like, how they're like their actual trajectory of their life, but backwards. And as I was thinking about this, I noticed that when they're getting into the medical capsules and they have those, they've got the explosives, and it's Omega that's holding the detonator, and she's the one that hits the button.
Yep.
So I thought about how it's kind of like, in a way, their life, the Bad Batch's new life, this whole, story arc that we've been going through, it really started with Omega, like meeting Omega. And from there, they've gone through this almost like a rebirth, like a rejuvenation. Like they've learned so much about themselves, who they really are, each one of them. And she's also learned about herself. And so, with the Christian, like imagery of like baptism and going into the water and coming out and you're reborn, right? And so it was almost like that. And so at the end of this episode, I just thought, okay, this is a new start. This is like everything happened during this season and for a reason, but now it's like it's all come to this, and I feel like whatever is going to happen the next season, yes, it may be like it happened because season 1 happened, but also it's going to be something new. I don't know. I really felt like that was very intentional on the part of the writers to do that.
I think that's where that's where the trajectory seems to be going, because even the whole idea of bounty hunters going after Omega is sort of over. I mean, Nala Se is kind of under Imperial control, and Lama Su is no longer around. So that element is kind of gone. So it is sort of wide open on where things go next.
And as far as the Empire is concerned, they're dead.
Right.
Unless Crosshair gives them up, they're no longer an issue.
Right. Yeah. And I think for me, the only thing that I'm hoping to see, and I assume we'll see it, is an interaction between them and Boba. But other than that, I have no clue where they'll go.
I want to see them go and free the clones. That's I really like. I think the greatest trajectory of the show would be they go find wherever the clones have been holed up or enslaved or whatever it is that they've done to them. They free them, and then they go off and make their own colony in the in Outer Rim. That would be awesome.
The problem is as I think we would have heard of something like that in Rebels if that were the case, but I don't know. They could.
I don't know, because then you got the whole like Thrawn's coming back in Ahsoka, and maybe that's where they went out to, and now they're bringing back the clones. It could be like this whole thing.
There's not a mention at all of Ahsoka Tano and Revenge of the Sith, obviously. So I don't know. So there's ways to do it, if it fits.
And Dave Filoni's kind of a genius at this, so we'll see. Any final thoughts on this season of The Bad Batch before we close?
Can I just give a shout out to AZ for his comedic, all the humor that he brought, because everybody else was kind of like feeling like all upset, during this episode. And we got AZ these really great one-liners like, greetings, you survived the aerial bombardment and are now moments from drowning. Like, or like, try to stay alive.
He said like, I love when we said to her about how like, you got to get out of here, you're going to perish and I will be all alone. It reminded me a little bit of in Rogue One. When K2SO makes that comment about how they'll all die in the vacuum of space, but he can survive. Thanks, buddy.
Okay, well, I think that's it then from us for this episode of The Bad Batch. Before we do wrap up, though, we do have some listener feedback to share. This is coming from Kelly Brown on Facebook, and this comment is in regards to part 1 of The Bad Batch finale, so last week's episode, and she said, I love this episode. I was not surprised at the revelation that Crosshair doesn't have his chip. I think that it makes it much more interesting. He's not a droid. He made his choice. I do credit Dave Filoni and the writers for making me care about Crosshair. I was glad to see that they didn't leave him. Personally, I don't see Crosshair being in the next season. I think they are setting it up that he is going to die to protect his brothers and Omega. A part of me hopes I'm wrong and we'll see Crosshair on the team next year, but I doubt it. I think it's safe to say that we will see Crosshair next year. He's not going to be on the team, though. At least not initially.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, and that would be a very interesting redemption arc to end up going down, is if eventually he does give his life for the rest of Clone Force 99. But I don't see that happening, at least end of the season, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
And that all depends on whether or not he chooses to be redeemed too. I mean, there's his choice in all of this too.
And I think some of it he needs to start seeing the Empire for what it is. That it's, it's not a safe haven. And that's what they kept trying to point out to him. But
maybe he'll realize that they really don't want him around because he's a clone. And maybe they'll just slowly force him out. And, or maybe whatever scout comes by just says, oh, it's just a clone, and just leaves him there. I don't know.
Right.
Well, who knows?
Well, and I think that's even how, like, I related to Hunter, who was almost like exasperated that like Crosshair didn't recognize that the Empire just left him on Kamino to die.
Yeah.
And Crosshair is sort of choosing to ignore that. Like, okay.
They did what they had to do.
Right. So yeah, lots going to happen in season 2. So that is it from us listeners, and we definitely would love to hear what you thought of this episode of The Bad Batch. You can let us know in various manners. You can email us any feedback at starwars@sqpn.com, or you can comment on our Facebook page. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, and you can tweet at us, and you can find us on Twitter at SQPN. We would like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Star Wars, including Father Leo H., Derek B., John N., Jennifer P., and Justin R. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Star Wars and all the shows at Starquest. And you can join them by going to sqpn.com/give. Also, please make sure that you are subscribed to the show in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, or your favorite podcast player so you don't miss an episode. And you can find us on YouTube. Just search for the SQPN YouTube channel and click that bell to get notifications of new episodes. You can also find all of our previous episodes by going to sqpn.com/Star Wars. And we will be back in 2 weeks. We are going to go back to our bi-weekly release of the podcast until Star Wars Visions comes out. So we'll be back in 2 weeks, and Andrew Hermes and I are going to be giving a review of Disney World and Disneyland's Galaxy's Edge, because both of us have gone there fairly recently, and so we're going to give you our take on the experience of going to Batuu.
And the rest of us are just going to step out. We're jealous.
We're not.
If you fit in my suitcase, I would have brought you along. So stay tuned for that, because I've got some fun stories to share from Batuu. So until next time, Angela Cialana, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Star Wars.
It was a pleasure.
And Mike Creevy, thanks for joining us this evening.
Always a blast.
And finally, Thomas Sanjurjo, always a pleasure to have you on board with us as well.
It's great to be here.
And once again, I'm Father Andrew Kinstetter. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Star Wars on Starquest.